to sensation and perception. So that was talking about the five senses and the way that we receive information. And so the way in which, like, if you touch something, then it goes, like if you touch something hot, then you feel it on your nerve endings, and then it like, you feel that also like in your brain, like you recognize that here's this event that happened. So that's kind of the converting of the different form of sensation. Sensations going into perception. So perceptions, which are the set of processes by which we recognize, organize, and make sense of the different sensations that we perceive. So perception is the sensation that you experience, like the hot feeling, along with the interpretation of like, oh, this is hot and ow, that hurts, to perceive that you are experiencing something that is painful and hot. Does anybody want to take over for these next couple of slides for me? Because I got overwhelmed.
Sure, I can. So I guess I have to share. Do you want to just like keep clicking as we go?
Yeah, I can keep clicking.
Okay, cool. So the absolute threshold, the minimum amount of stimulation that is needed. So these ones, as long as you have the definition, it should be pretty self-explanatory, like which one's which. So the difference threshold, the minimum amount of change in a stimulation that an individual can detect through a given sense, and sensory adaptation is diminished sensitivity as a consequence of constant stimulation. Okay, so this one will be really useful to like remember, just that like vision, self-explanatory, hearing and auditory can be like interchanged. Another word for touch is tactile, smell and olfaction or olfactory senses, and taste and gustation. So as long as you know your five senses and then you can interchange the other words, you should be good on this section of the exam. So here's an opportunity for you guys to apply it. So which of the following exemplifies olfaction? Touching the inside of a pumpkin, listening to a true crime podcast, smelling pumpkin pie in the oven, or seeing a jack-o'-lantern? Cool. Quick and easy responses. Good job, guys. So looks like all of you guys got that one. It is C, olfaction.
Oh gosh, sorry, I think I went too far. I don't know how to go back. Okay. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that.
So next we have like the different parts of the vision, like, and then we also will go over the auditory system. So for vision, just remember the different parts, the cones, the rods, and you don't really have to know the specifics. Just remember that cones are the color receptors and rods are the light receptors. And then we have the different parts of your brain and your visual pathway. So you have your retina, and then it'll go down and follow this path through until it gets to the visual cortex. Okay, so here are the major structures of the ear. We also have a visual on the next slide for you guys. So your outer ear is where the sound comes in, it funnels it. The middle ear consists of the three small bones, the ossicles. So remember that those are part of the middle ear that vibrate and connect the eardrum to the cochlea. The inner ear consists of the cochlea, the hair cells, which transduce vibration into the inner nerve, into the nerve impulses. It's like half in between slides. Okay, there. So here's the visual of that. So this is like the outer ear, and these are the structures of the outer ear. And then it'll go through into the middle ear. It'll shake the 3 ossicles here, which are again part of the middle ear, and go through the cochlea into the auditory nerve. So, which of the following is not part of the auditory system? Yeah, pretty easy. Good job. Thanks for participating. So yeah, see, the retina is part of the visual system, not the auditory system. Okay, so here we have the Gestalt principle, and this visual like nicely lays out the different ones. So closure, you kind of like see the whole image. Common fate, they look similar. Continuation, you can see the S even though the line is like going through it. Similarity, you're associating like the 2 together because they look similar. And yeah. We also have examples of these in the nearpods if you guys want like an opportunity to try and assign each one. So, true or false, does this image pertain to the Gestalt principle of similarity?
It's Gestalt. Allie.
Yeah, it's
I say
sorry.
it's Gestalt. Is Leah in here with us? Or is she in the other room? She's in the other room. She speaks German, so we could really get the correct pronunciation. But I think it's pronounced Gestalt or Gestalt, one of those two. Because I was I wasn't looking. I was setting up the exam. I was like, what principle is she talking about? But it's Gestalt.
All right, the Gestalt principle. And you guys all got it right. This is a trick question. It's not part of the
yes, that's a trick. That's a trick question.
So next slide. This is actually the Miller-Lyer optical illusion. So in this illusion, the arrowheads look significantly shorter than the feather tail one, even though they're both the same size. So you have 2 lines and they're the same size, but because of the arrowhead and the feather tail, it gives the illusion that one's actually longer than the other. All right.
I can take back over for this part. Sorry, I just like there was too much happening. So
No, you're fine.
Thank you so much, Allie. That was great. Yeah, thank you. You always come to my rescue. Now we're moving on to the next chapter with chapter 6 for learning. And so I've realized that I think that I've been conditioned to, like, whenever I hear a bell ringing, to think of Dr. Lucas now, because I hear her saying ring, 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 like in my head. I've been hearing it all week. So there's, you want to know about the 3 basic forms of learning. And so we're going to go deeper into those with classical conditioning, operant conditioning, and observational learning. And so classical conditioning, that was what we had talked about with the dogs and the bell. So when the dogs were associating the ringing of the bell with the food, then that became the conditioned stimulus of if they just heard the bell, then they started salivating as if they were as if they were presented with food, but even when there was no food involved. So the neutral stimulus, that was the bell, because the bell isn't associated with food like just naturally. And then the unconditioned stimulus, that's something that the dogs salivate for anyways. But then when you pair those 2 together and then take away, like once they associate the bell and the food together and then you take away the food, then that you have conditioned the bell to be a part of that stimulus to also get the salivation. And so this, I think this will also help with assignment things. And then going on to operant conditioning. So this is less about the unintended consequence, like unintended things causing something else, like food causing salivation, but this is more about specific consequences with voluntary behavior. So like if this was an example with rats where if they pull the lever, then they'll get some treat, versus like different groups of rats, if they pull the lever, then they get shocked. And then they learn that there's like, for some of them, if they pull the lever, then they'll get like a positive thing. For some of them, it's a negative thing. And so then depending on which group, like some rats would be more likely to be pulling the lever because they have a positive response to that versus others who would have a negative one. And then going on to schedules of reinforcement. So these are the different ways in which different responses and different things get like reinforced in the brain. So with fixed ratio schedule, that's you have to, the individual would complete the fixed number of responses in order to get like a reinforced response or a reinforced reaction. And then with fixed interval schedule, it's reinforcement for the first response, and then that's after a fixed period of time. So this is, again, like more definition related things. And then with variable ratio schedule, so that's completing a variable number of responses in order to produce the reinforcement, the reinforcer. And then lastly, with variable interval schedule, providing reinforcement for the first response following a variable duration of time. So there's a lot more information about this in your book, but the important things is knowing the definition and then being able to apply that for your exam. And then going on to the last like large overarching thing of learning out of the big three is observational learning. So this term was coined by Albert Bandura. And so that's like when you observe somebody doing something else, then you model and imitate the behavior. And this is also related to like scaffolding, which I don't think that we actually went over, but like with there's a lot of developmental research that shows that if certain children are around children that are like older than them, that are more capable in certain aspects, like if they're further along developmentally and the younger children are around them, then they're able to kind of bridge the gap between their existing knowledge and the knowledge that the older kids bring. And so then with that, they're able to do more complex tasks. And some big definitions. You want to be able to define what learning is. Which is a relatively permanent change in behavior or knowledge resulting from experience. So that experience can either be like we went over, like you either observe something or you are conditioned in some way to associate one thing with something else. And then behaviorism. So that's a theory that states that all behaviors are learned through interaction with the environment. And finally, a big definition of conditioning, which all of these we had talked about in the last few slides, but it's a theory that the reaction or the response to an object or event, which is the stimulus by a person or an animal, can be modified by learning or conditioning. And so that's like with the ringing and also with the opening of the little door. So here are the 4 consequences of behavior. So this was from our fun guest lecture, or Nick went over this in the guest lecture that he gave, I think on Wednesday. So talking about 4 consequences. So there's positive reinforcement. So that's like if the rat opens up the door and they get food, that's positive reinforcement. And so there's a bigger chance that that rat is going to continue to do that behavior. Negative reinforcement is if the stimulus is removed. So this doesn't necessarily need to be like a negative thing, like a shock. It's just that like if the rat like opens up the door and there isn't anything there, but it's not necessarily something that it just isn't adding in an additional thing. Or it could be taking away something that is sorry, I think I got myself confused with my rat.
I can jump in here. I
Yes,
like put this.
please.
Yeah,
Please.
sure. So positive reinforcement, you're gonna add something in order to increase the probability of behavior happening in the future. So if you do well in your test, you go and get yourself an ice cream, then you're more likely to study for your test again. Negative reinforcement. So say at the end of the semester, Dr. Lucas says, if you guys all have A's, you don't have to take the final exam. So you guys are more likely to like do well so that she can take away the stimulus, the aversive stimulus of having to take that final exam. So the final exam is removed, your behavior of studying increases. Positive punishment, a stimulus is added and the future probability of preceding behavior decreases. So this would be like, I don't know, like the most common one is just like spanking your kids, which is like really controversial. This is also the example of shocking the rats when they see the red light. So the light is red, they open it, they get shocked. So then they start to associate a red light with that. So they're less likely to open that whenever there's a red light. And negative punishment, a stimulus is removed. Usually this is a positive stimulus. So something like hanging out with your friends, like being grounded, hanging out with your friends is removed. So you're less likely to engage in whatever got that taken away from you.
Thank you, Allie. Thank you. And now we're going to go in for another example or another question. So if y'all can put your answers in the chat. So when the light goes green at a traffic light, the car in front of Sarah doesn't move. She hates when this happens, and from experience, she knows that blasting her car horn gets cars that are in front of her out of her way. She dutifully blasts the horn and the car moves out of her way. This is an example of
So for this, think about think about the whatever is like aversive and then like what happens to it when she does it. Good. Everyone's got it.
great job, everyone. Perfect. Yeah, so with before the annoying car, that's the aversive stimulus, and then the behavior that she engages in is honking the horn, and then afterwards the annoying car is removed. And so because the action that she took of honking the horn caused the response that she was hoping for, like I think if she had been honking the horn and then the person in front of her got out and wanted to go fight her, like that response might not be conducive, like that might not cause for her to then want to honk her horn later if something like that happens. But because the response was that the car moved, then that enforces the idea that if she honks the horn in the future, then that increases the likelihood of that positive response of the car being moved happening again. Brianna, I don't know if you wanted the chance to also share about things, since this is the last chapter, but I don't know.
I can do it since I did this one. I know we're running out of time, but memory is basically like the process to encode, store, and retrieve information. So remember, code, storage, and retrieval. So for memories to go into storage, it's important to remember the 3 stages. There's sensory memory, short-term memory, and long-term memory. And for retrieval, it's important to know that it's the act of getting information out of memory storage and back into your conscious awareness, basically remembering the information that you want to know. Next slide. So these are the different types of memories that are very important for the exam. So there's sensory memory. So it's the brief storage of sensory information like smell or taste, so like our senses. And so there are also two types of long-term memory. There's explicit and implicit. For explicit, it's memories that we try to consciously try to remember. So for like us right now, it's trying to recall the information that's on our psychology exam. So like all this review is like explicit memory. And so that's also split up into two. There's episodic, which is memories that we have personally experienced. And so that's like our events that we've experienced. There's semantic, which is knowledge about words, concepts, and facts, which is basically facts and concepts. So kind of like what we're trying to do with this review right now. And then there's also implicit memory. So these are long-term memories that are not necessarily part of our consciousness. It's not like we're trying to remember it like consciously. So for that one, it's important to remember a procedural memory. And so these are like the memories for skilled actions or how to do a behavior and action. So like they always say you never forget how to ride a bike. And so that's one procedural memory that we all have. And so this is just a little picture of the different memories. But the other slide is the ones you should really remember.
Very good PowerPoint, everybody.